know who I am. I'm Meredith Starzik. I'm the Director of School Counseling here at Weston. I see a lot of familiar faces here. Some of you are probably sick of hearing me for 4 years and seeing me do these presentations, but we're almost there. Just a raise of hands in here. How many of you have gone through this process before? Okay. And of those people, how many people is going through this process for the last time? This is it. We're almost there. Almost there. Nice. All right. Lastly, how many people are going through this process for the first time? Okay. Well, so for those of you who have gone through this process before, there's been some changes. So it definitely is good for all of you to be here to hear some of the changes as you go through the process again and kind of hear. This is the first time that we're doing a parent coffee. We thought that it would be nice to kind of have you guys in to hear the same message that we're giving your students that we gave them last week. Really quickly, just want to reintroduce our staff here. We have Wheat Osinski, our registrar, right over there in the corner. We have Ariel Luxberg, counselor right there. Meg Sullivan, counselor. Barry Manier.
Good morning.
And then we're very fortunate this year to have an intern with us, Miss Gargiulo.
Former Weston High School student.
Yeah.
Did you leak it out and come back? Yeah, come back.
So as an overview today, we just want to talk about where we are in the process right now and what the rest of this school year is going to look like as far as the college application process and going into the fall. For all of us, it really has been a pleasure working with your students for the last 4 years. We're definitely here and dedicated to help them through whether they're just finalizing their college lists, working on their college essays, or even planning a gap year. So wherever your student is in this process or whatever their needs are, we definitely are here to help them through that. We also recognize that students are in very different places right now. Some of us have received email after email over the summer from students
And that's just from the parents.
anxious about the process, and their list is ready, their Common App is ready, and they want to submit today. They're banging on our doors first week. Other students are really anxious right now, and they're just not sure where to go, and they're not sure about their lists. And that's okay too. There's no right or wrong right now where they are in the process, and we're here to get them through that, okay? So just kind of keeping that, in mind as we go throughout this. So last week, just to give you an idea, we took the students from English classes to go through this very PowerPoint that you're going to see. It's actually a very student-centered PowerPoint. You'll see the references to you, the student, in some of the steps. But as we said before, we thought it'd be good for you guys to see this as well. So before we get going, I just want to be the first to offer a little piece of advice for this process. And it'll be a common theme that I think you're going to hear through all the presenters today, is that as worrisome as this process is going to get for you, and as tempted as you're going to be to take it over, I know some of you may say, you know what, it'll be just best for everyone if I just step in and do the whole process for my child. And I get that. I understand it. You may think that's the best case scenario. However, it really is not the best thing for the student, okay? It really is an important process for them, and we want them to go through this process. We want them to own it. We want them to grow through it. And then from that, hopefully they'll realize that they can manage this on their own, and then hopefully, which means they'll be fine in college when they are on their own. So it really is a great learning experience for them. I know it's going to be tempting to try to jump in there and do things for them, but we really want the student to take ownership of this process and be a good learning experience for them. Now, saying that, we realize that what we say here or what we do with them doesn't always translate home. So we look at you guys as our backup plan, okay? So as deadlines approach or as things that need to be done, that's why we're here today to talk to you guys as, okay, if so-and-so's not following through, we will reach out to you and we will help for assistance, and you will know also maybe to check in with your child and say, oh, I heard you should be looking at this or doing this right now. Where are you in that process? Okay, so as kindly, gently nudging them as we go through the process. I did have a case last week of a student. We were in our student seminars. We had them log into Common Application. And I'm watching him as he's going through logging in, can't log in. And he said, I just don't know my password. I'm like, okay, well, you can reset it. And then as I watched him go through some of the steps, it will see that we did in the Common App. Oh, it's done for me already. He did not know it was done. He said, my mom did it for me. So it was, obviously, I said to him, it's okay, when we got to the college section, at least he knew the schools that were on there. So that was a little bit better. Unfortunately, the
We
poor
don't take that
mother,
for granted.
unfortunately, the poor mother is now locked out of his Common App because he reset the password. So they have probably a little discussion later. So those are the kind of things that, we're talking about right now. Because it really is important when we're working with a student, they know what their username and passwords are and what's actually been done or not done on their applications. And at this point, I actually just want to have Ms. Gargiulo kind of share a little bit about her experience here when she went through the application process.
Hi everyone. So I was here not too long ago. I graduated 2010 from here. And I know the process is different now, it's more electronic. But I had one of those mothers who I loved dearly, but she did everything for me. At the time, that sounded fantastic. But looking back, I really wish that she kind of let me do it all myself because I feel like it was a detriment to my independence now. And going to college, there's no one really holding your hand like there is in high school. So just from personal experience of someone who went in it, I know it's hard to kind of let them do everything by themselves, but it's kind of just helpful for them for the future when they get to college. So that's my piece of advice.
If I could have someone from Weston would be helpful too. Okay, so at this point we're going to go through the PowerPoint and I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Minier who's going to go through some slides with you.
This is kind of official. We've been through this with the kids. So this is the FERPA release form. We went over this. They had to actually, well, for most of you, we got the paper version back of this. We, by federal law, have to have the parents sign off whether your student is 18 or not. And we did this back, and it was all due like June 12th or something. So this is actually, they're doing electronically after we already have it on file from you. But the FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and this grants them a number of things. So if you go to the next slide, essentially what this is doing is giving us permission to send their educational records to wherever they direct it. So the first slide that they go through is how does FERPA relate to your college education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, they just have to check the box that says, I fully read and understand the FERPA release authorization form, et cetera. Next slide. Then they move along and it says, this is actually an authorization. I authorize every school that I've attended. So if they've attended a previous high school other than Weston, this authorizes all those schools because if it's a transcript coming from Fairfield Prep and they transferred in, it authorizes Prep will probably call and say, do we have permission? Yes. And so Prep would send their transcript and we would send our transcript. And this authorizes all the schools to send their educational records. Next slide. So this is what they're agreeing to. So then they finally get to the point where they have to sign off on it. I authorize every school that I've attended to release records, and then they have to waive or not waive their rights of access to their file. And every school has its own culture, and the culture here with 99% of the kids going on to 4-year schools is very different than other schools. And so we encourage the students to waive their rights. Now, why would you ever have the students waive their rights? We have the students waive their rights because if an admissions office who's considering the applicant of a student, if they have not waived their rights, then they assume that the teachers are not necessarily free to say whatever they would like and be as candid and as open in their assessment of the student as they would be. Because that means that the student has a right to see the letters, the parents have a right to see the letters, and those letters will be considered not as authentic as if the student waived the rights to the file. So ultimately, we encourage them to waive. Why do we encourage them to waive? The culture of this high school is that none of the teachers here agree to write for a student if there's going to be anything that would impede that student's progress in the admissions committee. There's more than enough teachers here. It's a culture where we're all all of us write for every single one of our seniors. And the teachers the same way. The teachers here will just simply say, I don't feel I'm the best person to write for you. I would suggest that you find someone else if they feel that there's anything that they would be putting in a letter that would interfere with a student's opportunity in admissions office. And so with such a college-bound population, and the fact that those letters will be considered far more authentic if teachers are free to write anything they choose, we encourage the kids to waive. But it is still an individual decision, and in many cases, a family decision. Now, we went over this in the spring, and they were supposed to have a conversation with you. So it may be too late for if they locked you out of that conversation and waived, then it's over. But for the most part, there is no harm in waiving. And I actually feel there's a case in Stanford that's working its way through the Supreme Court where students may win the right to see access to their file even if they waived. But that case involves only at the school that they have matriculated and are attending. So I don't know the outcome of that. Perhaps, that's fine. I mean, they're in. So like, how much can they, moan and groan about something in a letter that in a school that they're in, especially at Stanford. So from that perspective, that may be changing the landscape a little bit, but that's what the FERPA is essentially. Next slide. So then what we have to do is you've got two platforms sending information. So we have to link them because when I was the director at Daniel Hand, we had two Chris Browns, and then believe it or not, there were other Chris Browns in the country. And at one school, I got the award for one of my students, which I was a little shocked at the school that he got into. And a little shocked at the size of the scholarship. And so I called the institution, or actually they called me, because they were using the transcript from another student with the exact same name, middle initial, etc. It can't happen anymore because we now link. So the student applies via his laptop from anywhere on the planet, and it goes to, let's say, Dickinson. And then from Naviance from here, we have the kids link their accounts. And so electronically, our transcript, our school profile, our counselor recommendation merges electronically in a file at each school that your son or daughter applies to through the Common App. And so if it doesn't match, we've already matched this with most of them. A couple of them have said, I'm not ready to match yet, because it is linked to having filled out the education section of their Common. And as Meredith said, some kids are not quite there yet. They haven't really started their Common, or their parents haven't given them their password. But once it's essential, they put their Common App email address in, their date of birth, they press match, and it'll say complete if it's matched, and it'll say incomplete and give them a reason as to what's blocking it electronically. So it's all more behind the scenes stuff, but that virtually guarantees that the right electronic file from our school will get to the right Common application in whichever office that we have sent the electronic transmission to. Make sense? Next slide. Now we're looking at colleges. I guess the only other thing, what?
He's going to talk about something about first.
The only other thing that we're going to talk about that I would like to mention is we're already getting questions about, there's a lot of strategy involved, and there's a $1 billion industry out there making getting into college profitable. This is called the Statement of Principles of Good Practice. And we get lots of challenges every single year. Meredith is going this week to what we call NACAC. I don't have a speech impediment. It's NACAC. It's the National Association for College Admissions Counseling. And they've set the protocols for all of the stuff that we walk you through or walk your students through. For example, early decision, single choice the restrictive early action, single choice early action. They govern the deposits on financial aid, the depositing, the protocols for all of that are in the SBGP, we call it. Now, I don't expect you to download this, and I was involved with NACAC at the national level. I was on the board of trustees of the College Board. Those are the two major nonprofits that drive our behavior as professionals and should drive the behavior of students or applicants. And so we get into these areas where kids they're applying early decision, but they want to apply to two places early decision. You can't make up your own strategy for applying to college. And if one of my students applies to 2 schools early decision, first of all, I won't sign off on it because I have to sign off at my end. But if I know of a student who's purposely violating the SPGP, it is my duty as a member of NAPYAC, especially one who's been on a National Assembly with it, to call the institutions and let them know that this person is not behaving according to the protocols. And there are changes every year. The Meredith's going to the national meeting in Boston this week. They will be reviewing the SPGP. Here's an example of a change that was last year. Now, I'm a little bit of a policy geek because of my involvement, but like these are the kinds of things that will be discussed. So this year the language changed. The use of multiple admissions plans may be confusing or potentially misleading, especially when post-secondary members define them inconsistently, meaning colleges and universities also try and manipulate the SPGP, and that further confuses those of you in the room. So this particular item just talks about the clarity that if a post-secondary institution, college or university, is not following the definitions outlined in the SPGP, then they will be held accountable as a member of the institution. Now, there are some outliers. There's over 4,000 members of NAPYAC. There are a few institutions. Any institution that our kids apply to, I will virtually guarantee you they're a member of NAPYAC. But there are some outliers who do whatever the hell they want. The other issue that comes up quite a bit in the spring is we have parents double depositing at schools. That's a no-no. That interferes with someone else's opportunity. You're supposed to choose one school, deposit at it. If you get called off the wait list, that's fine. But you can't deposit at multiple schools. If we hear of it, then we're in violation, and we're held accountable as an institution, and that impacts future students. So I mean, that's a very serious discussion. We really have very, very minor issues with all of this, but I just want you to know that as a profession, we're driven by professional organizations that are all membership organizations, and they drive. I was on the board of trustees of the College Board, so it starts with boring meetings where I sat with a committee and set the SAT dates right through till 2032. That's a meeting you don't ever want to attend. But it's mundane stuff like that, right down to the actual bylaws and protocols that impact the way your kid is applying to college this fall. And Meredith will be informed of the changes in the SPGP this coming year. So I hope that that's an understanding. Ariel's going to walk you through the actual sort of how we keep track electronically, and these are the same screens you will see, and she'll walk you through how you can tell, has it gone, has it not gone, etc. I'm never going to hand out blood pressure medication.
So, welcome again. So we learned how to link Common App with Naviance. Naviance is the tool that we use to explore different colleges. It's the tool that your students use to explore as well. It's also the tool that they use to put all the colleges that they plan on applying to. So once they link from the Common App, if there were schools listed on the Common App, they should roll over onto Naviance. Some of them are duplicated, that's okay. You can go and change that if you see that on your child's Naviance account. So through the Naviance account, every school that your child plans on applying to, whether it's Common App or not, needs to be listed on the Common App under colleges I'm applying to. Okay, so as you see here, there are a few schools, but every school needs to be listed. We're clear? So on the Common App, on Naviance, every school that your child's applying to, whether it's Common App or not, needs to be listed here. Next slide, please. All right. The other thing that's important that your student needs to do, your child needs to do, is make sure that the information listed on Naviance is accurate. So you have the name of the school, then you have to put, how are you applying? So are you applying through Common App? Sometimes it only allows you the Common App option. It doesn't allow you to put anything else. If it's a school that is directly to the institution, there's directly to the institution. And then there's, I'm not sure yet, and we'll go through that. So it has to be listed. It has to be exactly how the student's applying, whether it's Common App or not Common App. The other thing that the student needs to make sure that they do is that little pencil. I don't know if you can see it in the corner, but there's a little pencil. That's how they go through and edit all this information. So they have to click on that pencil. They also have to list how they're applying. Are they applying regular decision, early action, rolling? How are they applying? So the information, it's going to be listed on Naviance. It's going to give them all those options. but they have to click the one that is accurate to that school and to how they're applying. So that information has to be correct. They have to have how you're applying, that has to be correct. Then the deadlines will match up for how they're applying, the deadlines will be there. And then we have to see, what do we see next? So then once that's finished, then we can look to see if the materials have been sent through our office here. So there are some schools that, excuse me, that the students self-report, and we're going to go into that in a little bit. But that means that we're not sending anything out. The students are reporting their information. So if your child's already put in information into that school and it's on their Naviance account, they might see initial materials submitted already. So the pending changes to initial materials submitted. So that might already change on their end. Once we send out our information, that information changes as well to initial materials submitted. So just making sure that you update the columns, updating all the information. This is crucial in order to make sure that everything gets sent to the college appropriately. Next slide. All right, so this is what it's going to look like when they go in to change Common App. So are you applying via Common App? Sometimes it says yes, and there's no option. Other times it says, it doesn't say yes. It says directly to the institution, or it says I'm not sure yet. Okay, so those are your three options. All right, now special note. If you are using the Coalition application, so there are some schools that use the Coalition app. If you have the option, we still ask that you use Common App. But for a school like University of Maryland, it only allows you to use the Coalition app. It's just a different application. It's just a different application. If you're doing the Coalition app, you need to select the application that your transcript will be sent from another way. So it will say, you have to put I'm not sure yet in the Naviance section. And that's how we know it needs to be sent that way to the schools. Got it? A lot of information. Just really making sure. I get it. It's just really making sure that the information on Naviance is accurate. So are you applying regular, is the student applying regular decision, early action, early decision, that has to be listed. The dates will go automatically, making sure all the schools are listed. I'm applying to 10 schools, 8 of them are Common App, 2 aren't. I need to have 10 schools on my Naviance list. It all has to be accurate information. You have to put whether it's Common App or not. That's how we know in the office here, Ms. Ozinski will go into it, how to then send the information out to that institution and how it needs to get there. Okay? Not too bad.
Just to piggyback on the Coalition application, it is something that's still new. So the reason why you need to do it this way is that Naviance and the Coalition do not work together right now, as the Naviance and the Common App do. So for us, in order to still send things electronically, we need things to be set this way. So if your student's doing the Coalition app and it's confusing, just have them look at their counselor and we can just make sure it's all set the right way. But that's the reason behind it.
And just please know, we get this question a lot. A lot of times kids will be under the impression that if Maryland has their own app and I have a choice between Maryland and the Coalition, well, they're going to consider me a little more if I do their app. There is absolutely no merit to anything like that. Your kids are going to be applying, most of them, to many schools. So just please have them do whatever makes their life easier. If they're lucky enough to have 8 schools that are Common App, don't have them complicate the situation by doing a school-specific app. Okay?
Most of the Coalition, it's Maryland and Florida schools. There are a few other, but the rest are pretty much Common App. If not, it's their own institutional application. Letters of Rex.
Fun, fun, fun. Now, as a small amount of you who have done this before with older children, but the process has changed a little bit. So deep breath. I saw some really big eyes when I came in. You're starting to relax a little bit. You were kind of looking sleepy when you came in, clutching your coffee. All of a sudden, everybody was a little bit more awake. I feel the energy in the room coming down a little bit. We're going to walk you through this step. Letters of recommendation. Every school has different requirements. And we've sort of held back the floodgates in Naviance. But what's happened is at this point, teachers need to upload directly to the institution. So the steps taken in Naviance are a little bit different than in years past for those of you who have older students. Basically, we had your students, if they were in the position to be able to know, they should have spoken to teachers by now. You know, most kids know at least one school that they're going to definitely apply to and when. So we have them click on this link underneath the college I'm applying that says letters of recommendation. This is the screen that they see when they click on that link. So basically what's happening here, your children have to invite teachers or teacher, depending on the situation. We'll go through that. Each teacher has to be invited to each college they're applying to. So these are the steps that are going to happen for each teacher with each college. Basically, the student selects their teacher. It is very important that they choose specific colleges from the colleges I'm applying list. If they write them a little, hey, thanks, really appreciate it, great, but not necessary. Next slide. Here's why, okay? So in this particular example, Northeastern University, the print is really small, so I'm gonna read it out to you. But Northeastern requires 1 teacher rec, they allow up to 2. So in this scenario, we encourage kids to ask 2 teachers, they would invite 2 teachers. University of Connecticut actually doesn't require any, but in this case, the 2 teachers would be invited. University of Massachusetts, same scenario. In our last example, which is Villanova, and this is why kids should choose for each specific college, Villanova only requires 1 recommendation. So had your students selected all colleges, let's say your student is planning on being an engineering student. So chances are they're going to want their science or math teacher's recommendation to go, since the college only reviews 1 recommendation. Specifically inviting, in this case, Mr. Joyce, to upload his letter will ensure that his is the letter that goes. If the student does the blanket select all colleges, the first teacher to upload goes to Villanova. The student loses their control. So basically, we're going to be giving your students, it's basically like a 6-step checklist. Do this for each college and you will have completed the process.
What if the student has requested for a teacher or someone outside of the Western schools to write a recommendation letter? So they're not in this system.
Actually, we're taking questions at the end, but you're bringing up a great point and we need to go back to a previous slide.
Yeah, I'll show that slide there, yep.
Okay, but to basically answer your question, because things are electronic now, if colleges will review an outside recommendation, it will be through Common App or however the student is applying. It's not through Naviance. We don't have the ability to send extra letters. So if the college will accept an outside recommendation for review, we can walk your students through the process of inviting an outside recommender. If you don't see that on a college's application, it's because they do not accept them electronically. In which case, you'd be surprised how many students don't know how to fill out a postal envelope. Good thing to teach them before they go to college. But they would have to give the outside recommender a self-addressed stamped envelope. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll show you the screen as it pertains to Common App for outside recommenders.
It's addressed to the school,
Addressed to the school, yes,
specific school.
correct.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we actually did hand out some sheets of paper for questions and pens. So if you just want to write down your questions and then we'll get to them at the end, okay?
The only thing I would add to this is that Diane was referring specifically to teacher recommendations. The counselor rec goes automatically, and it doesn't, this is protocols for teacher recs, when they say 1 required or only 1 allowed. That's specifically the teacher's domain.
So just a quick recap. Sorry. Can you go back one? Thank you. Your child will choose a teacher from the drop-down list, invite teachers to each specific school. You need to pay attention to how many letters are involved. So in that Villanova example, they only read one. And basically submit and ready to go. The teacher will be notified electronically. Mrs. Osinski also sends a reminder when we're notified that your student is ready to submit, and teachers are able to just take care of it directly with the institution. Thank you.
So at that point, Ms. Wilson's going to talk about the process itself. How do we get things going?
I'm really the lucky one in this whole thing. So, before I even talk about this, the one thing I want to say is there's a lot of people here, and there's 207 seniors, which means there's at least 414 parents, grandparents, step-parents, a cousin, an uncle, a brother, I don't know how many. So I'm asking that the student is the first line of defense for me. So send all your questions through the student, because you know what? If he asks once, he gets it. If the parent emails me or calls me, you might not send that information, maybe you do, but it's much easier when I say, come on this side of the screen and let me walk you through it. So, oh, they get it. So I ask that the student be the first line of defense before the phone calls start or emails. It's just a lot. If you're really fit to be tied, perfect, I'm happy to go there. I know sometimes it's really stressful. I know sometimes I've heard moms and dads crying on the phone. I've heard kids crying in my office, so I get it. I've had two who've gone through the system, a boy and a girl, and I get the difference. So, anyway, okay. For the student, they need to check their Weston email often. I can't run around and find 207. I don't know their schedule by heart. I don't know if they're in a sport right after school, so I ask them to check their email often. I've even asked them to put down their cell phone number, that God forbid a college calls me and said, okay, they sent their SAT, but then we lost it, but we know we had it, and which one can you give us the scores? I would never, until I contact the kid first and say, which one did you send? I don't know. He might have sent one, he might have sent them all, I have no idea, but I'll always say to the college, let me get back to you, so I'll quick either call or email the student to find out what's the information. Or they apply, but their application says one thing, and your Naviance is saying another. I go back to the student and ask them, so have them check their email often. And then there is a salmon sheet that goes out. Sorry, yeah, it's fine. So once the student applies, and meaning apply to me is they get this orange sheet, and this is just a sample, but they fill in the top their name, their counselor name, their email, their cell phone number, which two teachers are writing for them, so I know. And then underneath, are they doing an early decision? If they don't know right away, they leave it blank. Otherwise, they fill in the college. It says branch on it. They do this at my office. There's no more pink for those of you who are older. There's no more orange and pink slips going home. I had 1,900 pieces of paper last year. I can't do, my drawers weren't big enough. So we decided to consolidate it on a piece of paper. They come in, they fill it out. I date it, I know when to get ready, when to send things, and there's up to 23. There have to be more than 23 schools, there's something wrong. 23 is where we're kind of going. I had one kid who did 44 once, so. You add up, and at the time we used to charge $7 a school, because we had to mail everything. And then what the fee was to each of those schools. It was a pretty big bid. Okay, and that's this that we're talking, that's this sheet right here. So they fill out their college. Branch means, if it's the main campus like a Tufts, it's just Tufts. But if it's UConn, do they want Stores? Do they want Stanford? Do they want Avery? That's what that branch means. If it's main campus, they can just skip it. The college state is only because there are a couple colleges with the exact same names, but they're in different states. The date request is the date they handed in to me. Application deadline, that's important. And what I want to talk about this is, if their application deadline, and how they're applying is, let's say, regular decision, and they're given to me now in September or October, but they're not applying, usually regular decision is somewhere around late December, January, could even go into February. If it's more than a month of when they give me that slip and they apply to the school, the school and Naviance will not talk to each other. And then when the school comes back and says, I didn't get any of your information, I'm going, oh, they only just applied now? Well, they gave this back to me in September, October. I have to then snail mail. The computer only lets me send to that college once. And what I send, I used to send the teachers' letters, but now we're having the teachers do it. So when I get ready to push the button, it's going to be their transcript, a secondary school report, kind of talks about our school and how we grade and grade point averages, and the counselor letter. That will go when I push the button. Okay. Timetable, all the kids got this as well. It's just an example of, give me 2 weeks prior to when you want something to go out. Once they had one thing go out, I have uploaded into the computer, they can give me a 2-day notice. I just then push buttons, once everything is set up. So the first one, the first college, just takes 2 weeks. So the first time they ever turn in this sheet with something written on it, takes 2 weeks. After that, it's about 2 days. The counselors will get about 2 weeks to write. Once I get the orange sheet, I notify them with a salmon sheet. I notify the teachers, start writing. The teachers get 3 weeks because they're teaching, they're grading papers, they're, doing all that. So this is kind of a little bit of a timetable. If you're not sure and you're working through the process, the college deadline is November 1st. 2 weeks prior to it, October 18th is when I should have some kind of information in my box, in my office, and they all know where it is. It's pretty,
And that's a big deadline for us. Those are most of your early actions, most of your early decisions. Each of us will probably have, if we have 50 seniors, we'll probably have 35 letters due November 1st.
Sending ATA, this is not me, or it is? Okay, we can talk about it though, okay. So, a lot of times, the parent will email or call and say, which now it's gonna be the student, can you send my SAT or ACT? I can't. It has to come directly from the institution. So if you know what college is, don't wait till the last minute, because you have to remember, I don't know how many seniors are out there across the country and globally who are applying to all these colleges, and they get bogged down. So if you do have an idea where they might be applying, it might be a good thing to start kind of sending off that SAT. Don't wait like 2 days before and saying, oh, we'll just get there. Even if you do overnight, I have to tell you, I've seen it way too many times, it just doesn't get there. They try, but questions later. Right? Okay. Anyway, okay. After application, your responsibility, again, the student needs to keep an eye on it. So in Naviance, they can see if something's been submitted. They can see that a teacher sent their letter. They need to go to their college portal, which means, so they sign up to UConn. UConn assigns them an ID number. The kid logs in, and he can see all his checklists. So his check would say, oh, I see they got my transcript. I see they got my recommendation letter from my counselor. No teacher recs yet. Okay, so let's say he did see on Naviance that the teacher letters were sent. You have to give the college 2 to 3 weeks from when that notice went out for them to actually process all this paperwork. Again, you're not the only kid that was applying to that school. It could be 30,000. It takes them sometimes 2 to 3 weeks to process all the electronic data and get back to them and go, check, I got your teacher recommendations. If for some reason it's been 3 weeks out, it's okay to call admissions. I would have the student call, just so they get used to the process. Hi, I'm Joe Smith, and I'm applying to this college, and I'm noticing in my portal, you don't have my teacher recs, but I got a notification, it was sent over 3 weeks ago. There have been times where they go, oh, I see that they do have it, but they never checked your box. It happens all the time. The only other thing is if they apply a certain way and they're listed in Naviance a different way, they'll never match up. They have to be identical. So if Jack is a John, he needs to apply as John, he needs to be in Naviance as John. So just double check that as he's doing that. Okay, so just a reminder, if you haven't done a parent brag sheet yet, I know a lot of parents have not, but in Naviance, you need to go to your own Naviance side. About Me, on the left-hand side, is a parent brag sheet. Because if it's not there, it kind of delays the whole kind of process. You know that your student has to do the FERPA, pretty much we're covering that here at school. Colleges have to be listed. You check no or yes if you're applying by Common App. And again, the kids have all seen this. If they're a little confused, because it's a lot of information as you see, just tell them to come in and say, Mrs. Osinski, or they call me Mrs. O, it's just easier. Just show me one more time. I show them my screen and go boom, boom. Sometimes you need to see it 2 or 3 times. Request a teacher recommendation. And again, responsibility is the student to keep track. I can't keep track of 207, and I can't keep track of 1,900 schools. It's impossible. So I ask that they take a little ownership in this. And I'm just going to read my notes real quick to make sure I covered some of the things that were kind of more important to me. The orange sheet. Okay.
I just had one thing about
Yep.
the sample
Oh,
sheet.
here's one thing.
So the sample sheet that you have, so
Which is that sample sheet I
Right.
had back up there.
The orange sheet that your students are gonna have to go into Ms. Ozinski and fill out, so they can't take it home, they have to fill it out there. Since we just went through Naviance and how to update it and make sure it's all accurate information, it's easiest if they print that out, bring that in, and then they can fill out the orange form. Because they have the dates listed, they have how they're applying, everything's already listed for them. So they could bring that in, fill out the orange sheet, keep track of if they're putting a school on that's early action, waiting for regular decision, that sort of thing. So it's usually a nice organized way for them.
Yeah, it's in Naviance and it's listed in colleges I'm thinking about. When you hit that button, that whole screen comes up about the college, how you applied, what was the deadline, blah, blah, blah. They can print that, bring it in and just start writing. The other thing I want to talk about, we talked about the coalition, there are self-reporting colleges as well. A lot of the California colleges, a lot of the, South Carolina, there's a boatload of them. They're called self-reporting. The minute your kid puts that school on Common App, on my Naviance, they will see, all of a sudden, it's going to say initial materials sent. And the kid's going to go, I didn't do anything. And they're going to come to me, and I'm going to say, I didn't do anything. Naviance knows that that school wants nothing from us. No letters, no transcript, it's self-reporting. The student will self-report his entire transcript. They put it in, and if they're accepted just based on that in SAT and ACT scores, they only ask me to send the final transcript if they're accepted. So, if it's self-reporting, there is a list, and I don't know if we'll put it up on.
Actually, yeah, I was gonna talk about it.
Okay, good. Just so you know, and parents might call and say, please send it anyway. We can't. They won't allow us to send. That's why that thing pops up and it blocks me from doing anything.
All right, last week we gave your students a copy of their transcripts. It's an unofficial copy, but it's so that they have access to that. And actually, it's really good in case a coach wants it. They can make a copy and send that off to any coach that's requesting transcripts. So, just to add another layer of something else we have to do for the admission process, or your student has to do, a lot of schools are self-reporting, as we was talking about. So we talked to the students about the importance of being accurate when they are self-reporting. If there is an error, like you put in, it wasn't really an A-, it was an A, that will come back to bite you, and they could lose their position at a school. So we stress the importance of being accurate with them about it. So a lot of our students apply to a lot of these schools, so it's just good to know. The next screen has
Those are the Common App ones.
the Common App ones. So now, the student will hit My Colleges, it's going to select, let's say, George Washington. And George Washington is then going to ask them to put in all of their grades. Okay, so it's going to go step by step. They're not going to have to guess, is this self-reporting? It will ask them to put it in as they go through their Common App. Simply like how they would ask them to do an additional, a supplemental essay. Do we have that big list?
So then those are the Common App ones, and then these
Yep.
are all the other ones.
All, did we highlight the ones that we typically send to,
Pretty much
or?
all the blue ones are the state of California.
Yeah, state of California, well, the state of California, like UC system has their own thing, so the state schools are all self-reporting, and then you've got some big ones where a lot of our students are applying. South Carolina that's a big one. The Florida schools, Arizona, and then there's the UC schools over there. Again, we're sending this PowerPoint out, or it's
Yeah.
going to be on video, so you'll be
You'll have
able to
the
look through that list.
For the Los Angeles, are you through for a second?
I don't know. I may want to keep talking.
Just for parents' purposes,
Oh, yeah, those are the check marks.
green checks are good.
Yes.
So these are the sections of the Common App. So the profile is the student's name, stuff like that. Then there's the family section, siblings, parents' name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The education piece, we walk them through in the seminar. How many kids are in the class? Do we use a weighted GPA? What is their GPA, which is pulled from Naviance, et cetera, et cetera. Do we rank? We do not rank. So when you get a green check, it means you have successfully completed each section.
Most of them have those 3 green checks, so yay.
Thank you.
Yes, they do. And it's really exciting when we get to the bottom and it's all green. It is really exciting.
All right, so at this point, we're open up any questions that you have.
You can do for your reference.
You mentioned the desire to have our students run their own program. And I suspect I can speak for some parents and all of you that have gone through it, that you have a great desire to make sure our students are doing their program. How do we make sure that's being done? And we're going to rely on the school to ensure all the checks are there, and that they've done everything they need to do, so that the investment that we're going to put into our children going forward is met with the best education. How do we bridge that gap?
So that's why we're trying to give you the information at the same time. So if you know that your student's going to have a November 1 deadline, you know that by October 15th, we need that registration slip. So that's the biggest piece, okay? So it's just making sure and asking your student, okay, did you go in and hand in your registration slip? Okay, let me see your Common App. Have you completed these sections? So like asking the questions about where they are in this process, you also get to see these status pages as well. So you also know when something's been submitted and so on and so forth as well. You can see if they requested teacher's letter of recommendation. Okay, so it's kind of like, that's why we want to give you the same information and then just asking them those questions. You could always obviously ask us as well, you know, if there's a concern. And if you feel like you've asked your student multiple times and they haven't done it and they need some nudging, contact us. We can help with that nudging.
I mean, we've all been here late, days of filling out, helping students fill out the Common App, making sure it's complete, reading essays, making sure that those are okay. I mean, that's.
We nag a lot here.
We nag, you nag.
Yeah,
we
we do.
Together we nag.
We tell them to.
But also to keep home civil too, setting up a designated time to once a week, or as you get closer to deadlines, twice a week, whatever it is, to be able to talk about college stuff. So it's not like, oh, I don't want to go home. It's constantly, happening from the student's point of view. It's setting up certain times, like on Thursday at 8 o'clock, we are talking about college for 1 hour. Sunday, we're talking about college for 1 hour. And then that's it. Then your student at least knows. Or they know they can't go out or avoid you. Helps keep the peace sometimes.
Just a question about sort of that timing, that month window that we had mentioned. So let's say your student has sent the application to the school, and then, but it's early, let's say it's like the deadline isn't for 6 weeks or something. Then he or she waits, and 2 weeks later, make sure to let we know that that's happened, right? So that the school sends information within that month deadline, or as soon as that student presses the button, and even if it's like the deadline's early, even if it's 6 weeks, 2 months early, or whatever.
So you can't, and it can't, this is where, and we learned last year the hard way with a lot of this, and we actually learned with the reverse. It wasn't that the student hit submit and then we send our stuff a lot later. It was the reverse. The student requested something from us the first day of school to go, so like let's say Penn State, okay? But they didn't apply or hit submit on the Penn State app until 2.5 months, 3 months later. Well, Penn State's massive. After a certain amount of time, they lost our stuff because it never got matched to the student stuff. So that was more of the issue that we saw. We didn't really see the other side of it.
Well, the problem is that varies at every institution, and I think in the bulk of the cases, we're talking about the larger institutions.
Okay.
And they have these internal triggers electronically where, it probably tries to match 20 times, and the app isn't there. And so it goes into an inactive file somewhere in their system, and therefore, when the student does apply, it's not an active app because there's been too much of a lag, and we don't know what the triggers and lags are. That's why we're trying to keep the kids to within 4 to 6 weeks. But it's really kind of sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, Weed, isn't it? It's more the large institution. I'm sorry. It's really the Arizona states and places like that where we ran into most of our difficulty. But it could be any institution.
And just another note about that, because we saw this last year, and I don't want to pick on Penn State since there's a camera rolling, but bottom line is, you know, there is a lot of comfort in knowing that your student can apply to a large rolling school and have one in the bag pretty quick. On the other hand, you want to be careful, because last year we saw a lot of kids coming in early September, filling out our paperwork, and we were transmitting their transcript because recs aren't even needed. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. Well, suddenly that student realizes that maybe calculus isn't going the way they were planning, and they want to make changes to their schedule. It just opens up a whole worm can when you start dropping courses after stuff has already gone out. So please make sure that your student is feeling settled in their senior schedule. Take the time to know that quarter one is going well and that you're not going to be making any last minute changes. Mrs. Osinski is going to give your student the opportunity to look at their transcript before it's transmitted. We stress to your students in these seminars that they not only look at the past, but to make sure that the present class list is accurate, that, you know, honors classes are noted, that if something was dropped, that it's not still sitting there, because we have to upload transcripts in one mass, you know, swoop. So basically, there's gonna come a time where changes might happen after we've uploaded those transcripts. So that's the reason why your student comes down and works with Mrs. Osinski individually to look at parts of their file before it's transmitted.
And kids being kids, they get in December 15th or so, and then all of a sudden they're not sure they want to take AP American Gov second semester, senior year. And we're obligated to report any of those changes to the school, in which case they may have, for the institution, Gettysburg may send them an email that says, please explain why the schedule that we accepted you on is now being changed and you're downgrading AP American Gov to standard American Gov. And they probably should have a valid explanation other than, I play sports in the spring, I was looking forward to senior year, second semester being kind of cool. That's not going to fly. So we asked them to think very thoughtfully about what their schedule is for the year. And if there's truly, like, I don't think calculus went well for any of us that were planning calculus, but you know, if they're in calculus, they should need to be settled, like we just said. And this, like, senioritis thing, the institutions they're applying to keep them more honest than necessarily we would.
So I am definitely one of those parents that wants to take the whole thing over.
I know that
The next slide will be support groups for you.
You guys are doing a great job though, because my kids, I have twins going through it first time, so they're doing it all. I'm kind of just watching them saying, slow down, I can't see it. We got it. But my question is, like, before they submit it, if they do make a mistake or something is not in because they are going very fast and it's making me really nervous, before they actually submit, they could edit anything that they're putting in?
Before they
Before they
submit.
submit,
It actually turns it into a PDF as they go through the submission process. So they do get the last chance of, like, all their information they've been
They get
inputting
to
in those
see
boxes
everything
to
and
see how it looks.
Because they were doing like the resume last night and that was just like, you know, dates on it and all that.
Weeks, hours,
You'll get to see it actually in the format before they hit it. Again, like Ms.
Yeah.
Lumber was saying, they're asked, like, are you sure? And then you have to ask, put
There's
your
like
money in.
multiple-
And then
you
all
have
this
to put the credit
multiple.
card in, you have to check
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
things.
So
you have to
Diane,
sign your
you'll
name.
talk me through all this.
Mistakes happen, talk to us. We're also encouraging your kids, they should come and see us.
They are doing it, and I keep telling them they should go in,
Yeah.
and it's just, you know.
They're
Like,
good. If
it's
they're
a
not
lot of-
good, you'll be the first to know.
But it's also great
I don't
after
pull
they
punches.
complete it to then say,
You
I
have my
want to see
number.
what you've done. Go through it.
You may want to schedule a date for
Yeah.
submission.
You're not gonna get this credit card number to submit this until I look at the.
Look at.
So-
Yeah, let me do it, it's just
As the elder
scary.
statesman,
My third child is
and,
gonna do it all.
and one who still wishes I had a BlackBerry, because I'm not using 8% of my iPhone, I'm still in the mode where you can make it a PDF before you submit, print it out, put the screen away, and just sit at the kitchen table and go through and make sure that everything that you want in that Common App make the corrections on your draft, a paper draft, if you can imagine such a time, and then go back in on the Common and fix it, because there will be dates, there will be things that you catch when you